What kind of person do you picture if I ask you to think of an entrepreneur? What about a leader? Or maybe a job creator? Would any of them make the cut? What if I told you that we help 10 million young people achieve their goals every year, all over the world? And in turn, they create jobs and prosperity. JA has been preparing young people for successful careers since 1919. You find us all across the globe, in more than 100 countries. We're getting young people ready for work. And we get results. Our students go on to excel as professionals, taking control of their lives and careers, and some even succeed beyond their wildest dreams. JA students learn to do things like balancing a budget, negotiating deals, setting goals, and working in teams. It's hands-on learning from professionals with real-life work experience. All our programs are based in 3 fundamental principles: work readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. For example, in JA Company program, young people learn how to start and run a business. In JA Job Shadow, a student joins a mentor in a professional work setting. And students in the JA More Than Money program study the ins and outs of earning, spending, and saving. And these are only 3 of the more than 50 different programs that JA offers. Our network of staff, volunteers, and partner schools reaches young people all over the world, from major cities to rural communities and everywhere in between. And it works, because we pay attention to the needs in each region, and then we customize our programs so that JA students will be ready for the job markets they're about to enter. We even customize our own names. But at the end of the day, we're all one JA, JA Worldwide. And the core of our organization is the same everywhere. JA inspires and prepares young people to succeed in a global economy. Whoever they are, wherever they are, JA activates young people for the future of jobs.
Welcome, everybody. It is my honor to be opening the second edition of this series of webinars that we call Keep Learning. Very excited to have an audience formed by many of our leaders across the region in the 29 countries where JA Americas operates, but also staff members, and as well, of course, partners. So we are very excited that this audience has been growing, and we are having these very interesting and important discussions that then allow us to also come up with articles and papers to raise the awareness of issues that we think are critical for the development of our region. And this is why today's theme is why and how to invest in girls and women's education as a driver of development and prosperity. You will also have the chance to support our mission by donating, and you can see the QR code. As you all know, no money, no mission. And for every $50 that we can raise, one woman will... Hello, now I'm back. I had to change my location due to really bad connection. So I was just saying that this is a very important webinar because the people that we have today with us is very, very special. The first panelist is Betilde Muñoz-Pogossian, Director at the Department of Social Inclusion of the Organization of American States. We also have Cynthia Villar, our JA leader in Peru, and also Alex Fernando Garita, Corporate Social Responsibility, Employee Engagement, Regional Leader at LATAM for Johnson & Johnson. And finally, Hector Mujica, Economic Opportunity Lead at Google.org. So as I said at the beginning, today's discussion is about a social issue that we are, of course, all concerned about. It is something that keeps us awake at night because we understand that if we can tackle that issue, we can definitely make a huge difference across the region. So just to set the stage before we start with this conversation with the great panelists that we have today, I just wanted to share with you some ideas and some concepts. At the end, some concerns that we are all aware of. The first one is kind of obvious, and it is how the COVID-19 has impacted the region. And those things that were already bad now has gotten even worse. Globally, women aged 25 to 34 are 25% more likely than men to live in extreme poverty. The World Economic Forum predicts that now it will take 136 years to close the gender gap globally, which was only 100 years before the pandemic. Many working women in LAC region have lost or needed to quit their jobs because something very simple. Schools are closed, and now many of them have to stay at home taking care of their child. Most working women believe their careers will be slowed by the pandemic. And we can always think about this issue of the gender inequality in terms of dimensions. The first one, very important, related to Jay's mission, is of course education, where 31% of young women aged from 15 to 24 were not in education, employment, or training in 2020. Young women face the risk of being kept out of school for household and agricultural work. The other dimension is definitely workplace and the economy. 1/3 of women in LAC depend on others' income for their own subsistence. And women are paid 16% less than men for similar jobs and similar responsibilities. And this becomes even worse if we think about industries like technology and IT. And the last one is politics. We only have 1 in 4 seats that are held by women in national parliaments. So when I think about why it is so tough in our region to get consensus between different perspectives and ideas, it is just because it's only men dealing with each other. And that's a huge concern from my perspective. So now let's go into what it is most important, which is to get the feedback and the opinions of today's panelists. And as I said at the beginning, we have kind of a mix of some leaders that are in close connection and contact with governments across the region, some leaders that are bringing a change or trying to make a difference from corporate, and also a leader trying to do the same thing from the civil society. And this is also this collective effort that we think it is so important. So I will start with 4 questions. The first 2 will be more about the why, so we make sure that we understand that there is a meaning in the effort that we put every day to change this status of the region. And then to talk about the how, more to go into the action, the things that we can do to bring some hope to this conversation. And I will now tell Cynthia and Alex, the 2 of you, to get ready, because the first one, I will expect the 2 of you to answer. And then for you, Betilde and Hector, is easier because someone else broke the ice, and that's good in this situation. So the first question is, in your perspective, and always keep it personal. I know you are all representing a brand and you're representing big organizations, but we like to have also a conversation based on the personal beliefs and the convictions that we have, right? So why, and I will go with you, Cynthia first, why is it so relevant and critical to invest in girls and women's education?
Hi, Leo. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It is an honor to be here with such wonderful panelists and bringing this topic to light, right? Which is a topic that I think that we must hear about and do something about every single day. And yet we are doing very little, but every effort counts. So this is a big step towards the solution that we need. Why is it critical or important to me? I think the first thing is I'm a woman. So that is the first answer. And I feel the need of doing more things for other women. Also, I'm a mother of a daughter, 10 years old, a single mom, and that makes it also different. You know, trying to raise a girl for this future. Sometimes I wonder into which world I have brought her. But then I realized that working hard towards making conditions better will bring her also to a better future. As you just said, and numbers don't lie, there's a lack of possibilities, and based on the lack of education in Latin America and around the world. This is not just a LATAM problem, it's around the world. And it's based mostly because people are not prepared. I come from the fintech world, which is a very masculine world, and I have a fintech. It's an app that works on allowing people to become financially educated in order to be financially healthy. And it has been hard, you know, waiting a position in the middle of meetings where out of 10, I'm the only woman. And even though that makes me feel super proud, at the same time, it makes me wonder what we're doing to open more positions for women and more opportunities for women. So from my perspective as the JAA director of Peru, I can say that we're doing a lot. We're trying very hard. We're working together hand to hand with partners that allow us to bring this social responsibility money to programs where we empower and connect and bring more women to education. That is the basis of everything. I come from a family of educators. My mom is an educator. My grandpa was an educator. And one thing he always told me was that we are here in this world to leave a footprint in people. And that footprint is something that will never be erased if we based it on education. So that, Leo, is why I connect with this and why I believe it's so important.
And thank you very much. And interesting that you have become an educator yourself. Now that you're reaching thousands and thousands of young people in Peru. So
true, it's in the blog somehow.
Yeah, it's in the blog. Exactly, in the blog. So Alex, let's go with you. I mean, why is it so critical and relevant to invest and work on this matter?
Well, first of all, Leo, thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here and talk about this such a relevant matter. So I think that it is impossible to think about a better world without addressing the gender equity agenda. I think that education is a critical element in this equation, because when we evaluate the impact of education in women, we can see that a better economics prospects, we can see women better equipped to make better choices. Better educated women also earn more, have better jobs, invest their earnings into their families. So it impacts a lot of variables related with women, but also it's not just about women, it's about society. So I think that if we would like to address a better society, we have to address a better gender equity and address the gap that we are facing right now around this matter.
Thank you very much. And now moving forward with you, Betilde and Hector, I think what Sina and Alex have pointed out is kind of obvious that there is a cost associated to not really solving this issue. So, I mean, from your side, why is the agenda moving so slowly? At least it feels like every event, every conference that I go, we are all talking about this cost associated and how bad it is for economic development, social development. Why is it moving so slow from your perspective? If it is, you may say, no, it isn't. It's moving really fast. What do you think?
So I guess I can start.
Yeah, you go first.
And I get inspired by your last comment, Leo. I always say that we should see the glass half full, in the sense that we've seen a lot of progress in terms of gender equity and women's empowerment and access to rights. of course. And if we look at certain indicators, you talked about politics. Women have reached important levels of representation in most countries of the Americas. I mean, we're after the Nordic countries, we have the greatest number of women represented in legislatures. But nobody questions the women's right to vote. Women have entered the former labor market in most of the countries. I mean, there's important things that we need to kind of pause and say, okay, we've done progress. So that's the full half of the glass. But of course, there's so much more to be done, and the speakers that preceded me already spoke on in terms of the why. I always say that it is relevant, it is important to address this issue of women and girls' access to education and access to employment and access to decision-making positions, because otherwise we're losing 50% of the talent. Women are 50% of the population in most countries of the region, in the world, and if you don't tap into that talent, this has a monetary cost, additional to ethical and moral and social cost. Why are we not moving faster in terms of filling this other half of the glass? I would say it's a combination of factors, of course, some at the micro level, others more macro, that have to do with socialization processes and the way that, unfortunately, power dynamics between men and women have kind of existed. I think at the micro social level, we continue facing gender stereotyping that, for example, you mentioned it, Leo, influence parents' decision to send the boys to school instead of the girls, because there's kind of like where should I invest? The boy will have more access to jobs and be able to earn money for the family, the girl not so much. So there's kind of like a rational choice decision. Fortunately, this has changed in Latin America. Parents now are enrolling girls in the same numbers as boys or more. You have the issue we didn't mention yet, the scourge of gender violence, that is also more pronounced and more profoundly suffered by women and girls in the region. And if we look at the situation of girls, we know, according to UNFPA, the United Nations Populations Fund data, that the Americas is the region in the world with the world second highest adolescent pregnancy rate. These are things that are impeding women's access to education and women's access to formal employment. And these are things that can be fixed with interventions, policy interventions, opportunities for empowerment and training like the ones that JA America does around the world, that kind transform that reality and provide education to girls. Then there's also issues that have to do with broader dynamics that I would point out, and we don't have to go into that, but I'm very happy to continue this conversation post this webinar. I think one issue, very broad, that is happening is the oversimplification of the contents of a feminist agenda, of the women's rights agenda, if you don't want to use the term feminist, by public opinion and media, that sometimes falls into sort of demonization of women's rights and girls' rights agenda. And this is something that I think we need to address, transforming the conversation into one that is focused on the human rights of women and girls and nothing else. And then perhaps another sector, and I was very happy to see the video, is very diverse and has all the colors and all the faces of human diversity. It's also understanding the concept of intersectionality, something that we at the OAS are pushing a lot towards, and sort of make evident that not all girls and not all women experience the world the same way. It's not the same being a white girl in an urban city in Peru versus an indigenous girl in a rural area in the same country. So these are things that also need to be taken into account, that may unfortunately still create an obstacle for that indigenous girl in a rural area in Peru to be able to access education.
Absolutely. And actually, before we ask Hector about if he sees the glass half empty or full, I have a statistic here from the World Bank, which I think represent both perspectives on the glass. It says women represent 50% of the population in lack, 40% of the economically active population, which is great. And I think that has been improving. But when you click on that and you see the percentage of new businesses that are founded by women, that goes down to 15%. So if you double click on the aspect of entrepreneurship, for example, not just work readiness, but entrepreneurship, only 15% of new companies and businesses started by women, just to reinforce what you have just said. Hector, from your side, half empty, half full, both?
A little bit of both. I think I agree with my colleague Betilde in the sense that that we have to acknowledge how far we've come, right? I think we have definitely over the last few decades made significant progress towards greater gender equity, more girls than ever before going to school, more women are represented in the workforce than ever before. But enter COVID-19 and the pandemic and enter a handful of new challenges, right? We're seeing globally that women are twice as likely to lose their jobs as a result of the pandemic. Women are now also doing double duty in terms of being teachers and caretakers and mothers and working professionals and dedicating themselves to spreading themselves rather thin across the various demands of the household and their professional lives. And we're also seeing the impact in kids and girls and children around the world having dropped out of school. I think data tends to show that girls are less likely to go back to school when schools return to in-person session. Some estimates, also by the United Nations, point to as many as 20 million girls may not return to school post-pandemic. I think these are some things that are alarming, that call us to take action now, not only to get back on track, but to address some of the bigger issues at play. And Leo, to your question around why are we not moving forward as fast as we should be? What are some of the impediments? I think this is really a systemic issue. We have systemic barriers that we have to overcome. And those barriers often are rooted in imbalances of power. They are rooted in discrimination. They are rooted in sexism. So these are challenges, these are societal challenges that are rather pronounced and take a rather long time and a lot of intentionality to resolve. And I think there are some tactical solutions that we can and should be leveraging to get to a better place faster. We need to get more money to solutions focused on women and girls, and we need to support more women in decision-making roles. Some things that we can be doing alongside of this is put more money towards solutions that are centering set solutions on women and girls, that are led by women, that are centered on the women experience, and are going to therefore be able to have the most disruptive and meaningful impact in those communities. We can also put more money, quite frankly, put more money towards resources and solutions that are centered on women. We know that worldwide, only 1.6% of philanthropic dollars go to causes that are focused on women and girls. 1.6%. That's astonishing, right? And we know also from data, this is US only data, but data from Echoing Green shows that even though female social entrepreneurs outnumber male founders by 15%, they have significantly less access to entrepreneurial resources to build and grow their businesses and their ideas. So really it's around bringing the right resources, bringing the right financial components to ensure that we level the playing field as much as we possibly can, and that we lift up women in the process, women leaders in the process, right? We know that women represent 3/4 of the grant makers and staff, but less than half of grant making CEOs. Again, going back to my earlier point, there's an imbalance in power, not an imbalance in authority. But generally speaking, about the glass being half full, I am optimistic. I think we're seeing some leading figures in philanthropy with Melinda Gates, Mackenzie Scott, and a handful of other philanthropists from across the world that are really signaling that women are also giving back to society, and we are looking to do our part also from Google.org with disruptive programs like our $25 million impact challenge for women and girls.
And based on the experience that Jay has partnering with Google.org and Johnson & Johnson, we are definitely changing that really terrible statistics that you have just shared, the 1.6% of the total funding only going to this specific issue. So it is exciting that we are seeing more and more partners coming with that social issue as the key objective. So now let's move with the how, and we will go with the same order than the previous row of questions. And now, so in the how, we will have two questions. The first one is more general, and the second one will be more personal, as I said at the beginning. How can we better then promote and invest in girls and women's education? How can we do a better job? So, Cyn, from your side?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with everything that has been said before. I definitely realize that we're all connected towards the solution, and that is very interesting. There's a USAID quote that I particularly love, and I will read it. And it states that education is one of the most critical areas of empowerment for women. When girls are educated, they lead to healthier and more productive lives. An educated girl has a positive effect on her health, family, community, and society as a whole. And this shows me that the answer is crystal clear, isn't it? We must invest, just as Hector just mentioned, more in building a very strong block, this very important block of human capital, which is education. From our side, we're doing it, working very hard, and I rejoice when I see the number of girls impacted by all the programs that we have, and how much effort we're putting into bringing opportunities that will definitely change their lives. Just as Beatriz mentioned, it's not only, Betilde, I'm sorry, you mentioned, it's not only the girls from the richest areas, but definitely the girls from the rural and poorest areas that deserve to have the same opportunities in order to grow and be part of a future generation that will bring more and more opportunities to the rest. So I think that after seeing all this, the question that arouses to me is how many more generations are needed to change, right? And I believe that we've seen growth. That's true. That's the glass that we were talking about, the positive side of the glass, but there's so much more to do. And from the fintech side, there are 400 million people in Latin America that are underbanked or unbanked. That is critical. And even if this is not just a very big number, 30% of women have less access to credit than men, So from every 5 credit requests that men have, 2 are rejected, 3 are accepted. In the case of women, it's even less. So you can imagine how hard it is for women entrepreneurs to grow businesses, because it is known that a financially healthy entrepreneur who has access to financial solutions has 8 times more likely chances to grow. So that is very big, It can definitely change if we do something about it. So this is only in the fintech world, and it happens everywhere. It's just a little picture of what every sector is. So I think that I believe that our pillars today as JA, entrepreneurship, employment, and financial education, which is very, very important from early ages, will definitely be part of these huge solutions, and we will have larger numbers to show very soon. And also something that I will empower girls to do, or I will always say that it's positive, is to help other women. Before we were taught that there were very few opportunities for us. So we had to fight as lionesses, to get that opportunity. And that's not how we build something strong in society. We have to connect with our why, with our purpose. That's very important. And then empower other women and stretch our hand for others to grab it and pull them up, because that's what will lead us to a better economy, to a better world, to more educated, empowered, and strong girls and women for the future.
Thanks, Cyn. And that goes to how systemic this issue is. You mentioned lack of access to credit as one very simple but critical aspect if you think about women not being able to start their own businesses. And we talked about entrepreneurial training before. So, and that shows how systematic it is. Alex, from your side, how can we do a better job?
Well, for the first question, I think that every company should take a position in this matter, right? And it is related about how much they would like to invest in this situation, and also focus the right amount of resources in this matter specifically. So in the case of Johnson & Johnson, we believe that seeing the future jobs, most of them are going to be related with STEM. And Hector, working in Google, knows it very well, right? So our bet is to invest in promoting, fostering STEM on girls since primary, since secondary, because we believe that we have to do this kind of work in early stages of women. So Johnson & Johnson, since 2015, started a program called Wisdom 2D, that is an acronym that means Women in Science, Technology, Engineering, Manufacturing, Math, and Design. A big word, right? But it has been quite a journey, because we have seen the effect of this work with not just as a Johnson & Johnson, but also the power of partnerships. And something that you said before, Leo, is the importance to work in partnerships. This is something that we cannot address alone. We need to work with NGOs. We need to work with other companies, partnering with other companies, also partnering with governments as well. I think that Betilde said something very important, is the lack of policies around this matter. I think that we need to push the creation of educational policies in our countries around gender equality, around breaking stereotypes in the schools, putting in the curriculum this gender equality agenda as well. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is the personal thing, right? My personal story. Well, I'm a father of a 10-year daughter, but also I am adopting 2 little girls, and they are also Black. So imagine my parent and supporter clock is ticking in my side, right? I need to do a lot for my daughter. I need to do a lot for my 2 other daughters that, besides being women, they are Black. And that's another layer in this issue, right? Because we cannot see white woman issues and Black woman issues at the same level. So that's my personal thing, right, about this matter. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing that. First, congratulations for what you're doing. You are definitely inspiring many others. And I think, as Betilde was saying, not all women are seeing the same story across the region. They are all seeing it based on the reality, where they are based, and so on. But for those 2 little girls, they are very lucky to have you, Alex, as their dad. So congratulations on that. Hector, now for you, Betilde, for you, what do you think we can do to better, to improve the issue we are discussing?
Let me just say that I'm really enjoying this conversation. I've loved what has been said here, the ideas that have been proposed. Cynthia, kudos to you on that point on sorority and creating, this thing of lifting the hand of the one that's coming behind you. I love that. That's an issue of personal, individual responsibility. The call to mainstream the vision of gender equality in everything we do, in the families that we are creating, in the way we behave and interact in our workplaces, in how we interact in the community, and the bigger. I love this. And perhaps you guys have already mentioned some of the policies, projects, or interventions, and for even need for funding on certain initiatives that can help further the gender equity agenda. I perhaps want to talk directly to women and girls, if that's possible, and if they're listening. I think it's important that we as women also work in our own empowerment, right? And find ladies and people, women who are referent, who can serve as a model for what we want to become. Of course, the road to our own leadership is a very personal one, of course. I mean, we know the new challenges we're willing to take, what costs are we willing to pay, because there are costs in terms of developing an agenda in the public sphere or a new business. I mean, you have to make decisions in terms of how you're going to invest your time. I mean, hopefully you have the privilege of making those decisions. Only we as women know what we are ready to tackle, when we should do it. And perhaps I would just make 6 very basic recommendations. Number 1, we didn't discuss it, but it's something that I am like fascinated and I think we need to discuss more, is that we, girls and women, have to work on their own imposter syndrome. All people have it. Men and women have imposter syndrome. But because of particular patterns of socialization, women and girls face the imposter syndrome more, and that generally tends to impede having the courage to take on a new assignment, say yes when you're invited to take on a project or a presentation, things like that. Just for those of you who don't know what the imposter syndrome is actually, it was coined by Sheryl Sandberg, the former CEO at Facebook, that said talked about these ideas that we have in our head that sort of make us question our capacity, whether we are ready to take on a new assignment, more challenging opportunity, and that are, is things that we can ourselves address. So number 1, we need to teach our girls and work as women and as girls on our own imposter syndrome. 2, very important, to map out aliados, I guess, did I say it right in English? Make sure that you know both men and women who can work with you on this road to empowerment. Number 3, the need to make or sort of, work on making intelligent and humane networking or human-centered networking. Networking that is based on people, on the person, and not what you can get from them. So that, I think, is very basic in terms of creating our own pathway to leadership. Number 4, be your own advocate and for other women, which is why I love Cynthia's point on this. And this is in terms of opportunities. If someone gave you an opportunity, you took it and shined. You brillaste, I guess. I don't know if I'm using the right tense in the verb. And when it's your chance and you see another woman, another girl who can have the same opportunity, give that person a hand and bring it to the light too. Number 5, I definitely think social media and all these opportunities that, especially with the COVID-19, we are getting to, improve our knowledge, improve our skills via online trainings. The presence and all the information that is available is another way that we as women and girls can continue improving our road to leadership, which takes me to the last point, which is investing in yourself. If you have the opportunity to take these opportunities, to take these projects, to take these challenges, don't say no, go for it, forget about your imposter syndrome, and keep shining, keep leading.
And Betilde, I've been seeing you in action on social media, really becoming an influencer and raising, the flag and raising this issue. And I mean, you're the director of a department in the Organization of American States, not any department, but the one focused on social inclusion. And I mean, from my perspective, governments in general are too conservative, and are difficult to move. But I've been seeing you moving fast and being more fresh. And from your personal experience, I mean, the path and the journey that you have gone through so far, I'm sure the 6 things that you have just shared are the things that you have been applying. Is that
Correct.
the case? Something else you would like to add on how you went through that journey for many girls that might be listening today?
I think, again, it's a very personal decision. Only when you're ready to take on this. But I think the key advice is don't postpone it. deliberately sit down and think with intention how you see yourself, where you're going to invest for your own personal and professional development, and sit down and write a plan and how you want to achieve this. And if perhaps two additional pieces of advice. Number one, don't think of yourself in a unitary leadership line. Try to diversify, because there's many facets to you. You are not the job is not you. Think of yourself as contributing in, as a volunteer in particular activities in your community. But also, if you have some savings, investing in a particular business where you maybe will grow, and then that will become your livelihood. But don't forget about your academic, nurturing your academic side, or, intellect. Maybe you're not in academics, but reading and learning new things. And, and I think it's definitely need to diversify. Don't put all the eggs in one basket. And then the last piece of advice, find women that inspire you. Find that person who you want that person to be your referent. And connect with them. Don't be afraid to send a message in LinkedIn, to find them in social media, follow them, and learn how they did it, what the challenges they face and how they overcame it. And again, do it in an intelligent and humane or human-centered way, not because you're going to take things from that person that inspires you. Also offer things to that relationship, because we know, people know when you just want to connect to get something out of it, not because there's something personal and inspiring about the relationship.
Speculate. Do it genuinely. Don't speculate. That's the case. Yes, yeah, exactly. And Hector, from your side, how can we do a better job? And also from your personal side, how are you affected by this topic, if you are in any way?
Yeah, happy to speak a little bit about that. So I think we've done some thoughtful conversations around personal development. I really loved everything you mentioned, Betilde. We also talked about entrepreneurship, talked about the power of STEM and early childhood education. I think all those components are incredibly important. Where I tend to be focused, or when we tend to be focused at Google.org, is very much on pathways to the digital economy, very much recognizing that the trends that the economy is headed is very much in a much more interconnected and much more digital direction. So, we see that in the data. We know that nearly 2/3 of all new jobs created since 2010 will require either a high level or medium level of digital skills. And we also acknowledge that there is a skill divide, a skill gap that's closely aligned and very much attached to the gender gap, which is why at Google.org we've been investing and heavily focused on narrowing that gender gap in terms of access to digital skilling, and by extension, access to jobs in the digital economy, access to upward mobility, and ensuring that gender is not a determining factor in prohibiting that access. In Latin America, we've been working with organizations like Sulabatsu in Central America, Red de Mujeres Emprendedoras in Brazil. We've been working with organizations across Latin America like Laboratoria, which is really very much focused on, again, bridging that gender gap for women in tech across Latin America. And we've been seeing tremendous success. So again, I'm going to leave with a note of optimism, ensuring that we are seeing, and we're highly inspired and motivated by seeing these organizations, the tremendous work that they've been doing to date, the impact they've been having, and also moved by their commitment to bridging these gender gaps. On a personal note, and why this topic is near and dear to me, not just wearing my professional hat as Google.org, but also my personal hat as a brother to a sister, as a son to a mother, as a husband to a wife. The topic of promoting gender equity is as important now as ever. Like I spoke about earlier today, the pandemic is creating greater divides, is really highlighting some of the existing inequalities that plague our society. And we have to take active steps, both professionally and personally, to create more inclusive and respectful environments that actively and intentionally combat sexism where we see it. We need to be making space for female voices, female leadership, where we have space and influence, and just be really intentional in how we design our work, how we approach our work, how we approach our grant making as grant makers, our personal philanthropy as individuals, and really acknowledge that ultimately a more equitable world means a more just society, and that is something that we should all be striving for.
Thank you very much to all of you for not just sharing your professional view, but also more from the personal. We do have some questions from the audience, and the idea is that I will share the question and you can decide who wants to answer it. The first question is related, I think, something to what Betilde mentioned, and it relates to the fact that there are other cuts when looking at gender issues, such as race and other minorities, as we said. The question says, for example, a white woman has statistically fewer employability challenges than a Black or a trans woman. So the question is, what are the main challenges and solutions to create equitable selection and professional development processes that encompass all differences? So how we bring that diversity when it comes, to equity challenges into corporations who are hiring and putting professional development plans together?
Well, I will just react very briefly that this issue of intersectionality, which is what the question addressed, is always existed, but as a concept and as a conscious decision, is only recently that we've been addressing it, at least in the human rights field, right? This idea that all these identities cross and create particular obstacles for, one group versus another, or one person versus another. And because of that, we are not very adept at mainstreaming the vision of intersectionality in public policy design and public policy implementation. Just to say, we are estamos en pañales, no? We're in diapers.
Yeah, in diapers.
In terms
exactly.
So it's a challenge just because of that, right? In the workplace, it has everything to do with leadership, making a decision to prioritize the learning, organizational learning and individual learning, and adjusting certain dynamics in the workplace to the realities of particular members of the group, right? It may mean consider, and we're doing it now in our own organization, a telework policy that considers that male employees versus female employees, because of traditional division of labor in domestic affairs, have different challenges at the time of arranging their schedules. And it may mean sort of making explicit that diversity, that inclusion, will be a principle by which the office, workplace, and business will operate, right? And I will have to say that, there's many studies that have already quantified the cost of excluding particular members of groups, the talent that this diversity of people bring. So it's actually a very pragmatic choice, ensuring that this diversity is part of the workplace. I think of my own the project implementation. When I write a project by myself, sitting in my desk, is one version of the project that is so-so. But I always love to do this. I share it with as many members of the team that, with their own realities and experiences, review it, and it's always, every time, a better project proposal. So just a very simple example to illustrate how this happens in the big picture.
But what you're saying, it won't happen spontaneously. You had to put a structure, a system, procedures, even policies to assure that decisions and processes, like putting a career path for a woman, is being done in the right way. Alex and Hector, do you want to react to this? Because I'm sure you see this like in your corporations, how I don't know, Johnson & Johnson or Google are dealing with it.
What I have seen is that companies are taking big steps in terms of diversity and inclusion. And when you see, for example, these new roles about diversity and inclusion leaders in the organizations that the organizations are currently hiring, And it's like a big advance in this agenda, right? I think that this is a situation that organizations know that they have to address. So having in place procedures, having in place policies in order to assure the fairness in the process of recruitment, in the process of development, in the process of promotion is part of the things that our companies are moving forward in this matter. And the other thing is also companies are fostering within the organizations the employee resources group. The employee resources group is an amazing opportunity for our employees to move the agenda on specific matters. So in the case of Johnson & Johnson, we have an employee resources group related with opening out, another resources group related with women leadership inclusive. So this is another element that we are adding and we are seeing in the organizations, and it is part of how we are advancing in this specific matter.
Yeah, and I'll quickly add, yeah, like Alex mentioned, right? I think all the similar sentiments also apply to a workplace like Google. I think the fact that corporate America is now having to confront these realities and it's having to answer these questions to their stakeholders, whether it be the employees, whether it be policymakers, whether it be investors, right? I think we're seeing a greater level of accountability, a greater level of sophistication around these themes and these topics, and companies are responding in line. They're staffing up with teams that are being thoughtful, incredibly thoughtful around intersectionality, around really understanding the nuances of identity, right? It's not, identities are no longer binary, and I think are now much more complex and much more integrated than ever before. And I think there is, as a result, a need to meet the place where society is from a corporate perspective. Similarly to what Alex was mentioning, I think the way that Google addresses that is both empowering employee bases through employee resource groups, through forums and dialogues, and also ensuring that we have greater representation and leadership. We've made a lot of commitments over the past year around racial justice, racial equity, and that's being taken particularly seriously as a company. And I think we see that reflected in corporate America as a whole, which again makes me optimistic about the trajectory that we're headed in.
Thank you. And we have many more questions, and I want to let the audience know that we will continue to have these type of debates. But the last question that I wanted to share is related to the fact that these challenges seems to be the same across every country in the region. And in this panel, we have, I think, 2 from Venezuela, 1 from Costa Rica, 1 from Peru. Do you think that's the case, that is kind of universal for the whole region, or there are like clear differences between countries when it comes to gender gaps? Like, do we have countries that are doing really, really bad compared with others, or what is your experience, perception?
Let me say like a bold statement. I think that is global. It's a global. Historically, the gender equality gap, it's a global issue. So maybe they have some different characteristics or variables involved, but for me, it's global. We need to address it as a global situation because we need to see it as a main situation to solve. We cannot take we cannot take the level of urgency in this matter by going to the details of each country. It's something that we need to take it at the urgency high level action.
Correct. Correct.
Leo, just to add on to what Alex said, I believe that, yeah, it's a global matter. It's something that we should address as a worldwide thing if we want change to be, for everyone. I do also realize that some countries have a head start in what they have been doing, and that is not to compare with them, but to look up to what they have done and be able to try to replicate what has been done well and fix whatever has not, but not in terms of, oh no, they're better, so we don't see them anymore, but in terms of let's learn from them and let's continue to grow from experience. That's the best way of growing. And something that, just to close, has impacted me today. It's a very tiny detail, but you can see how we all women connect. And it's the polka dots that Betilde and I have. So we have to spread the word of this, just as these polka dots have spread all over. Because things are not casual, they are all cause effect. So I think that is something important, Betilde.
Excellent. I agree with you, Cynthia. Yes, my point was actually along the lines of what just was mentioned by Cynthia in terms of the collective learning that can happen regionally, right? Because there's commonalities to the challenges, but there's more progress, for instance, on women's political representation in certain countries of Latin America versus others. But there's very interesting entrepreneurship programs and a more lively ecosystems for new businesses in some countries versus others for women, right? Or poverty programs or poverty alleviation programs more developed in some countries and not so much in others. And so the point is the collective learning that can happen amongst countries, which is something that we do very well at the OES, connecting countries and helping them cooperate with each other to improve the responses, to improve the policies that are designed to address the challenges of gender inequalities and gender inclusion.
Yeah, and I'll quickly mention, I agree with my colleagues, right? I think machismo, sexism, patriarchy, this is an ongoing pandemic and there's no vaccine for this one, right? And I think the way we're going to solve this, like we've been talking about, like we've been mentioning, it's going to be through collective action. It's going to be through dialogue. It's going to be by having the tough conversations and having the difficult acknowledgments where we have to acknowledge each of our shortcomings. And we're seeing that. We're seeing different countries be more comfortable with some of that dialogue and some of those conversations. And I'm hopeful that more and more countries will follow suit.
And I think this is the best way to close today's webinar, because this webinar also tried to be part of that collective effort to build the collective knowledge, as you, Betilde, were mentioning. So again, Alex, Hector, Betilde, and Cyn, thanks for being part of today's webinar, for sharing, as I said, from your professional, but also from your personal perspective. And hopefully we'll continue this debate, and not just the debate, but also going into actions and bringing solutions to this social issue. Thank you all of you who have joined us today, and hopefully we will see you in the 3rd edition of our Keep Learning webinar series. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.